It's it's been I think it's been a good transition. Of course, it was like got here right, right in the middle of recruiting, so went right to work. Um, really focused on that, focused on trying to get to know the players here. I think that's a big thing. I think that's one of the reasons why they've been so successful here because of the relationships. They do it in recruiting, and they've done it with the players. So, just trying to get to know the guys, and then is getting into a new defensive system, which I'm familiar with. With what Coach Pruitt's done, and then working with the special teams again. That's something that I enjoyed when I did it early in my career at Georgia Tech. So that it's been fun working with those guys, and really enjoyed this group of players, the linebackers that we have. Right now we're still I'm still in the evaluation process of a lot of those guys, but the one thing I can say, they've come out and give good effort, and they've worked really hard.
Coach Pruitt said yesterday that, I guess kind of because of Coach Groh, that the staff at Alabama and at Tech had a fairly good relationship prior to this. How much did you know him before coming here, and what's it been like working with him in the early going?
Well, I've known Jeremy for a long time, actually since back when he was a player. I knew him then, and he kept up with his career, and we would speak and talk. And then, when I was at Tech, a lot of the things we did, in the secondary, in the back end with the backers in the secondary, a lot of it was very similar terminology. We visited with them, on a number of occasions. So, let me say I'm familiar with the language, that he speaks, and. But I've always been very impressed with him. I always, the first time I met him, he was just one of those guys. You knew he had it, and he's very smart, very confident in what he does. He has a passion for what he does, and he's. I've really looked forward to working with him, and have really enjoyed it so far.
I know you had the opportunity to potentially stay on at Georgia Tech and be in the running for the defensive coordinator. Obviously, you like something you saw at Coach Fisher and Coach Flores. What was it that drew you to this position?
First of all, whether you're running a business or you're running a football program, I think the thing you look at first is people. Now, that being said, I have nothing negative to say about Georgia Tech. Coach Johnson was very good to me and my family. But I've known Coach Fisher for a long time. Had a lot of respect for what he's done as a coach, what he does for people. He's and it was a great opportunity, for me to work in a different program, to see the way things, maybe some differences the way things were run. I've been very fortunate to work under some very good head coaches. Three coaches that I'd worked for in the past, had won national championships at some level. And I just felt like it was a great opportunity to have a chance to work with Coach. And then at the same time, this staff. I knew a lot of guys that were on staff here, and I knew what kind of people they were. And so it was, for me, it was just the right time.
Obviously, last year, Florida State special teams had some issues with the blocked punts, fumbles, and returns. Have you had a chance to evaluate any of those things, and what did you see?
Yeah, and that's, I have, looking at the big picture things, the one thing that we've started out with first is punt. The one thing we do, I know this about special teams. There's so much hidden yardage involved in the game, and people don't until you lose a game or something bad really happens. Nobody really says a whole lot about it. But what we want to develop is consistency and confidence, in coverage and protection, the whole scheme of things. During a game, there's probably, if you take the punt team, there very seldom or there are many plays in a game that are farther covered than punting the football, an offensive play. I mean, it's usually a minimum of 40 yards. So you can either gain those 40 yards for your side or, you can lose them and then you lose that net, that's where, I know in the past, that's what we look at so much is net punt, because that's what you're gaining, And if you look at the statistics of field position and how it affects a game, we get the ball on our offense, we get the ball on the minus 35 or out, we got a good chance of scoring. I mean, the numbers say that. I mean, the stats don't lie about that. At the same time, if we can pin people deep, it makes it harder for them to drive the ball down the field. So we're trying to develop some consistency, in that. Now, that starts with, everything. The punting, the protection, the coverage, it all goes in together. But that's one thing that spring practice is for. You can evaluate a lot of things. We're working a lot of guys to see who can do what, and we'll make an evaluation after spring, of that.
What did you learn most about having the opportunity to be in charge of Georgia Tech's defense second half of the year last year? Personally, what did you learn most from that experience?
Well, let me say this. It's the first thing is your guys, players, I mean, they've got to believe and have confidence in what you're doing. That's the number one thing. And you want people to be able to play fast. There is no magic call. There is no perfect defense. If there was, defensive coordinators all across the country would call it all the time. It's still about, putting your eyes in the right place. Reaction. Defense is so reactive. And just repping those things. I'm a big believer in the more reps you get, the better you're going to be. It takes a ton of repetitions for something to become muscle memory. And you just got to do things over and over and over. It's one thing I like about the way Coach Fisher sets up practice. You get tons and tons of reps, which that's the way you learn to play. And but yeah, some of those things, and I think you can stand back as a position coach. Everybody says, well, wouldn't you want to be a defensive coordinator? Well, until you've stepped in those shoes and made those calls and made those decisions, I think sometimes when you come back as a position coach, it gives you a little better insight in helping your coordinator. You know what I'm saying? Knowing what he needs, knowing the things that he needs you to help him with. When, for example, sometimes you don't need a lot of answers. You just need to be there and do your job. Everybody in an organization, that's the other thing. When you're the leader of something, you understand that in an organization, everybody's got a job. And if everybody does that job to the best of their ability, then the organization moves, it grows. And I think that, that's the one thing of, being in charge of, those last few games. It just rekindled that and reminded me of it. Because I know this, it's kind of like people ask me sometimes about, my job as a position coach. I'm not the coordinator, okay? The way I tell a lot of people, Coach Fisher's in charge of the organization. Coach Pruitt's the architect of the defense. I'm the contractor in charge of the linebackers. My job is to make it look the way he designs it. And that's kind of the way I look at the organization.
Last two questions. How much, whether in the interview or just since you've been here, how much have you talked about the second half of that ACC championship game with Jimbo?
Not, not a lot. Not a lot. We, there've been some, comments here and there about it, but we haven't sat down and, really talked about it that much.
Do you think that helped you?
I think probably more than anything is just, probably the relationship over the years and, working with, him in the past. And listen, I can't promise anybody anything. All I can promise is that I'm going to work every day, as hard as I can, and I'm going to give him everything that I've got. I'm going to give these other coaches everything and give these players everything. And I think that hopefully that had more to do with it, than that.
You mentioned earlier that you're still obviously evaluating the linebackers, but
right.
Just kind of your early impressions of Telvin, Christian, and then I guess kind of that third linebacker spot that's kind of being filled.
Well, there's, I can say right now, Telvin and Christian, all the guys have really given great effort through the fourth quarter drills and, first couple of days of practice. They've been anxious to, I guess, like a sponge, picking up everything new. And they've made some mistakes, but you're going to make some when there's some new things. But the one thing I like about all of them is they're trying to play fast. We want those guys to be productive, and it's a gradual process. It's a process. As far as what I see, I think it's too early to put people and say, okay, they're a lock here. I mean, I think linebackers are interchangeable. We don't want to pigeonhole people, because I think when you do that as a coach, it kind of gives you narrow vision. But as long as they keep, the things they got to be able to do, they got to be able to beat blocks, they got to be able to stop the run, they got to be able to play in pass coverage, and they got to be able to, when we pressure, they got to be able to get to the quarterback. That's what we're looking for. And we've seen some glimpses of that, and hopefully as the spring goes along, we'll solidify things a little bit more.